Like when the last question finishes the round, so say this is the last question.
Welcome.
Just keep going.
On behalf of Untitled Learning, thank you for joining us today.
So is this student a teacher now? Seriously? How cool is
We
that?
have a great panel for you today on the topic of transformative PD. Our guest speaker is Alan November. Alan is an international leader, as you know, in education technology. He was named one of the USA's 15 most influential thinkers of the decade by Tech and Learning magazine. His most recent book, Who Owns the Learning, made the Education New York Times bestseller list. He has worked with schools and universities in 40 countries. And this is the second year we've been working with Alan, and we're very happy to work with him again.
Here.
I will turn it over to Alan, and he'll introduce the rest of the panel.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. Really, really great. We have a great panel, too. The panel's better than I am, so we'll focus on the panel. Practical people who do real things. Why don't you introduce yourself? I think that'd be best. If you just say hi. We'll start with Karen. And actually, I've hung out with Karen at Spring Branch, which is an amazing district. Just say hi.
Hi, I'm Karen Justl.
And your wild passion.
Oh, that's right. I'm the Director of Educational Technology. I enjoy photography, but my wild passion is, I guess, trying to transform learning for my 2.5-year-old granddaughter.
Oh.
My name is Michele Eaton. I am the Director of Virtual and Blended Learning for the MSD of Wayne Township in Indianapolis, Indiana. And probably no surprise because of my title, my wild passion is quality online learning.
Hi, I'm Andrea Winters. I'm the Director of Learning Technology for Clear Creek ISD, and like the rest of us, yes, my passion is definitely changing education to be more engaging for students and give them a reason to want to come to school every day. Outside of that, my passion is my 3 kiddos and being a soccer mom.
Yay.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Bayard. I'm the Chief Technology Officer in Clear Creek ISD. I guess my wild passion in education is really trying to find ways in which students can maximize their interests and talents so that when they graduate and get out there, they are the best at whatever they want to be.
All good. Okay. So this is kind of informal, the way we run this, and then if we have time, at the end we'll take audience questions, but I'll start launching the questions. And the questions range, I'll just tell you up front, right? So the questions range from just sort of how do you manage staff development. The whole focus is on professional development, professional growth. But I'm also intrigued by what we have to unlearn, what we have to teach people that they do every day that we should stop doing, which is more difficult than adding something new. That's what the research shows. And I'm interested in long-term impact. How do you measure over years, results, accountability systems? So I'm really looking forward to the answers because I know these guys are tackling some really difficult concepts. So let's just start with the management bits. Sort of how do you see it and how do you manage it? And maybe even, if you're willing, what goes bump in the night?
You have the mic.
Robert, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So first of all, professional development, the word development drives me crazy. And so it drives me crazy because we call it professional learning in Clear Creek ISD. And this is why it drives me crazy. So I looked up development earlier this morning just to see. The second definition in there was the process of starting to experience or suffer from an ailment or feeling or painful feeling. Is this really what we want to do to teachers or each other? No. And so it's important to treat teachers as professionals. Every organization, whether whether lawyers or doctors, could you imagine doctors that don't have professional learning sessions? I think we'd be a lot worse off, obviously. It's important for us to model what we expect teachers to do. And so in Clear Creek ISD, We have teachers in professional learning within our learning management system, within its learning. And when we started that, a few years ago, it immediately boosted the comfort level of teachers because they were students, they were participants at their own campuses and at the district level. So that makes a difference. Practice what we preach and be models for our students and teachers.
Maybe I could just follow up on the platform opportunity. Because, you know, teaching can be a lonely professional life. You don't even know what's going on next door. Or in another building in your district, Clear Creek, you got buildings everywhere. So does it work? I mean, so now that you have a platform and teachers can collaborate and see the work of other kids, sometimes I think that's more powerful than going to a workshop. I mean, do you want to, is that the case?
Yeah. So when I first became a math specialist, before it was a coaching position years ago, I was flabbergasted by the different teaching styles and the various levels of interaction that teachers had with students. I just thought everyone was doing the same thing I was doing and doing card sorts in the math class and trying to get the kids happy and excited about learning. And then I saw it wasn't that way in every class. And I've talked to many people who have become coaches who are equally surprised. And something that we've done over the last several years, we do learning walks with teachers so they can visit other classrooms. And of course, having the learning management system helps teachers to collaborate and engage in an online forum where they can be a little bit more honest with each other and see what each other's doing, respond to comments, have those blogs and discussions that we really didn't have those opportunities for in the past. When teachers show up to professional learning sessions, typically it's still guided but there's never an opportunity to really see how it's implemented in class.
Thanks. Yeah. Andrea?
Yeah, so expanding upon that and also your idea, I had a conversation with Dr. Smith, our superintendent, the other day, and it came up. He said, we have lots of amazing teachers, but we have a super amazing teacher that really is transformative in the way that they're teaching algebra at the high school level. And every parent and every child wants this kid, right? Wants this teacher, right? You get those calls all the time. I want my kid to have that teacher. And he said, how do we expand that? How do we replicate what Mr. Tran is doing? And so we got to thinking about that, and we have started a little bit of this on some of our campuses, but next year we're really expanding it. We videotape our teachers, and I'm sure a lot of districts here are utilizing some type of form of that. There's a lot of technology out there where the teachers wear like a little tracking band, and they have like the thing that follows them. And we have a little different idea on that, and it was really unique that our coaches, our instructional coaches and curriculum coordinators said, you know, we don't just want to focus on teachers. When we are videotaping teachers and being reflective in that, we want to make sure that we're focusing on students. And so we put GoPro cameras in the back of the classroom, and the teacher or the instructional coach can kind of walk by and turn it on with their app. And of course, the teacher knows that it's there and the students know that it's there. It's not a secret. And then we have the videos and we upload them, and we can share those good instructional practices through our learning management system. We have those deep, rich conversations using the discussion boards, and teachers can then be reflective not only with their own practices, but we really are starting to share those best practices. And it's one thing really for somebody to stand up here and talk to you about what it looks like. It's one thing to really see what that looks like in a classroom. So we have 100 square miles and 44 campuses as our district. So if we can't get on those learning walks and see what's going on next door down the street, our learning management system really gives us the ability to share those best practices, have those teachers connect together. And I'm sure we're not unlike y'all. We have a lot of what we call singleton teachers. I'm the only one on my campus that teaches this. And we're able to connect those teachers and best practices as well through our learning management system. It has completely transformed the way our teachers collaborate and what it means to be a learner themselves in professional learning.
Well done.
So to kind of expand on that and this idea of how you manage professional development, I'm sure we'll probably talk a lot about different ways to provide PD, especially in in ways that match the instructional models we want teachers to be implementing in their classroom. And so I have some ideas about that, but I think for me, the critical first step in making that possible, and a lot of that I think happens in an online and blended way, especially when you're providing professional development across buildings, across the district. People have to know how to learn in that space. And that was kind of, it seems silly, some of the things that I did, but teaching staff how to interact and learn in a professional learning community online was an important thing for us to teach. When you think about the internet that our students know, they've never known an internet where they couldn't contribute. It's a natural reaction to being online, is that they are not only getting on there and viewing, but they are contributing. And I'm relatively young, but when I was first introduced to the internet, it was a consumption tool. And so it is not natural for pretty much any of our teachers to be put into this online community and then have the light bulb go on that, oh, this is a great place for me to share and connect with other people, and this is a way for me to learn. So for us, my first step when I took my position in the technology department, before I was able to really move into doing some really neat things online and personalizing PD, I had to teach our staff how to participate as an informal learner in an online community. And that meant that I was probably a little irritating, but what I would do, I would set up I wanted the courses, these workrooms, I guess, online to look a lot like what they'd look like for students, to make that transfer easier. But when I would get an email from a teacher that was like, hey, Michele, I found this great resource, I think you might like it, I would say to them, can you copy paste this email and post it to our discussion board in our course so that others can see it? And same kind of thing, I'd get a new online teacher, and so this one example, I had a teacher send me an email and said, what do you do with communication for online students? How many times a month should I be communicating? How should I document this? And I responded to her, I have a lot of opinions about this, but why don't you copy paste this, put it in the discussion board, I'll respond. But then what was cool was it prompted other people to go on and respond, and I found out things that were happening in our online school that I would have absolutely no idea was going on, and she got a lot richer feedback than what I could have provided in an email. And so after about a year of that very intentional pushing and teaching about this is how we use this space, it started to happen really naturally. Now, that could be because hopefully it's because they thought, wow, this is really valuable. I'm getting feedback from everyone. It also could be that Michelle's just going to tell me to put it here anyway, so I might as well. But that piece laid the foundation for us to be able to do some other really neat kinds of PD, because we learned how to be learners in an online space, and that opened the doors for us a lot.
All right, well, I'm just going to build on what they were saying. So I think we had our principals, because if you don't get the building principal involved and leading this charge on a campus, I can sit in my office all day long, but they're the ones who actually make it happen on their campus. So we had campus leaders, and it was so wonderful because I had one campus leader who sat in the back, and as we were showing the platform, because some of them, it was their first time in, we built a course for them, so we're modeling exactly what we expect to happen in their classroom. She was already figuring out, oh, okay, I'm going to make a campus PLC for my teachers so that I'm going to make a course in here that's just for them. Then we were sharing how we bring teachers from around and teach them how to build a collaborative course with their team so that they're collaborating as a team. We even have some district level teams where maybe all of our Algebra 1 curriculum writers are together and they're building. So you're constantly building courses and having teachers use the platform as you would expect them to do. And then she realized, okay, so I'm going to have these two opportunities for teachers, and then they'll have their class with their students. I think the other thing, and I like your work group idea, that was cool, but what we've been doing to change our professional learning is we really are trying to get teachers to understand how to use the different parts of the platform. So how do you use an online discussion board? How do you use and create an assignment with students? And how can they provide you feedback? So it's basically, how do you learn the platform? And a lot of our teachers wanted to come to 6 hours of sit and get, where they can sit there and they can go through all the tools. And so we have decided, and then they do nothing with it. So, you want to talk about how do we need to change, and I guess it's a little bit about accountability. So we do not give any professional development or professional learning credit for coming or learning how, I guess we have courses built on how do you use the online discussion board. The way you get credit, so we walk them through, here are the tools, here's how you do it, is you actually implement it in the classroom with your kids, and then you submit and reflect on how it went and what you're going to do differently next time, and that's how they're going to be getting credit. Because anybody can sit there and go, oh, here's how you create an assignment, oh, here's how you do this, here's how you do that, and then they close their computer and they walk out your door and they're done, they've got their hours of credit, but we're holding them accountable for actually implementing it in the classroom with their students and reflecting.
Well, building on what Karen just said about accountability, follow-up, results, any other models of accountability that you have looked at, that you found?
So last year, we have several campuses that were utilizing the individual learning plans within ITS Learning for teachers to create their own personalized professional learning plans, and they would submit those to their campus principals. And a certain number of hours had to be job embedded. So they had to work with an instructional or technology coach in order to get the number of points that they needed to complete by the end of the year. And so next year, what we're going to do is we're going to take that to another level where we have different tracks, and we're going to have badging on top of that. So we have the how-to. Yes, I have the skill, but then I know how to, and I did implement it into a class, and here's my artifact, and here's my reflection on it. And then the third level is going to be, how is that changing my instruction to more student-led and personalized learning? So we're going to have 3 different types of badging levels based on their professional learning plans that are personalized to teachers. So that's going to be a lot to manage, but we have our campus administrators that are already doing this, so we know that they're really excited about that.
So when they submit, so you're giving teachers the option or requirement for personalized learning plans?
So they have to have.
They have to.
They have to have personalized learning plan, but they get to tell us what they want to focus on based on some conversations with administrators and instructional coaches and curriculum coordinators, and they can say, well, I know I need to help with, aligning more rigor in my formative and summative assessments, or maybe I need to help more with student engagement, or I just need to learn more about blended learning. Or so they get to decide what the topics are within their plan, and then the principals assign points to them, and they have to have so many points by the end of the year.
And do they have access to each other's plans? Can they see all the plans?
The teacher has the option to share their plan if they want to. It's not a requirement.
Wow. Yeah, do.
Okay, so we're doing something very similar, but switching up the piece that's required and the piece that's the teacher choice. And this kind of, I'm going to digress a second. I have a tendency to do this. This started because I had a core group of blended school teachers who went through the design thinking process, tackling a problem, wanted to try something new in their classroom to solve a problem. And the solution they came up with was to implement individualized learning plans for all of their students. And it started out with these really phenomenal conversations with kids about where they want to go, how they learn best, and that was great, but then it failed pretty miserably. The students didn't, they had written them in documents, the students didn't reference them, it was too hard for the teachers to manage, and we got together at the end of the year to reflect on what went well, what didn't, and I was so pleasantly surprised to hear a teacher say, okay, well that didn't work, how can we make it work? Which they could have easily been like, well, this doesn't work, on to the next thing. And they felt really they thought that personalization was very important, and they believed in it. And so this fail forward mentality kind of stuck with me, and I was like, I could sit here and give them ideas and tips about how to do this, and I've never even tried it myself, or I could do it for them. So we did the ILPs for all of our virtual school staff this year, but the thing that we did was the first column was kind of the topics, and that was the non-negotiable. We had a school improvement plan. We have 3 school improvement plan goals that we submit to the district that says these are the things we're going to focus on. So we had 3 goals. Everybody's focusing on that. But if you're a French teacher versus an Algebra 1 teacher, how you address those goals could be a little bit different. So I pulled them together. We created learner profiles where we identified our own strengths, needs, interests, and constraints as learners. And then I had them use that as a tool to advocate for themselves as a professional learner. And we went through each of the goals. I put up their high school teachers, and I'd never tell them that I gave them a choice board, but I gave them a choice board. And I'm a 2nd grade teacher in a previous life, so that's that was coming out. But I basically gave them options for how they could learn the content and demonstrate mastery. I asked that they have at least one of each for each of the goals. I didn't tell them how many hours they needed to earn. I wanted them to have complete autonomy. And I believe that teachers are professionals that want to do what's best for kids. Like, I don't think I have to come around with the stick and say, you have to do so many hours. And of course, I was pleasantly surprised. They did more work this year than I would have ever asked them to do had I mandated a certain number of staff meetings. So they selected, based on who they were as a learner, just what their PD was for the year. And then my job was to facilitate that throughout the process. So it's very similar, but switched a little bit.
And I'll just change it up just a little bit. We are a year behind, I would say, in the implementation than they are. So I think this is more of a personal accountability, or where the teams are holding each other accountable. So as we are doing professional learning opportunities with our teachers this summer in the platform to try and help them hold each other accountable, we're asking them to come as teams, so that they can build on the strengths of one another and work collaboratively themselves in the platform, and so they can see how it could be the same for their students. And that's really turning out to be a really nice twist on our professional learning. Last year, when teachers would come individually, it was like, well, I'm here by myself, my team's not here, I don't know if they'll really do this or not. And so now when they come together and work as a team, they're co-creating in the platform, and it's just been really powerful. And I think it's going to pay off for us. And then our promise back to them is we're going to continue to support them as teams throughout the year. So we'll come in to their building once a month and spend some PLC time or some extended planning time with them to help keep the momentum going.
For me, accountability isn't in the form of student grades or scores. I don't want to see that. It doesn't matter. What matters to me is seeing a teacher take a risk and encouraging teachers to take risks. I would much rather go into a classroom where a teacher's trying something new to engage their students than go into another class that's just lecture, boring, and playing it safe. Now, that safe teacher might have the same scores as they did before, maybe even decent. But if we really want to change education and change the learning, we have to encourage our teachers to take risks and be willing to try, get out there, step out and implement their learnings. How many times do we leave ISTE and we leave these great sessions? We're like, man, if I get it. The next year comes around, like, I learned all these things, but did we really learn them? Because we never implemented them. And a lot of it is because we go back to our comfort zone. I want us to get out there, take risks. There's so much great knowledge that we're learning from each other here. Why don't we go back and actually do it?
In the doing, yeah, the research, Fullen and others show that the role of the principal, which Andrea, you highlighted, that the principal is the person responsible for checking off these personalized learning plans. It's not the tech director, it's the principal. And I'm convinced that we need to support principals, that principals need professional development in order to learn how to manage change. Because it's really about change. It happens to be technology, but it's really managing change is the general skill. By the way, I recommend a book. Have any of you read The Emotional Side of School Change by Dr. Robert Evans in the room? Anyone? 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 I was the technology director in the high school where Ferris Bueller's Day Off was made. I was. No, seriously though. The Emotional Side of School Change, you'll find it on Amazon. I got some videos of Bob presenting at my conference. He's an amazing guy. And I'm concerned that we don't have enough change management knowledge and skill in our schools at that level. And if you're missing change management skills, the best technology might not find root as deeply as it could without that clearly defined role of the principal, especially in accountability. So I just want to highlight what you've said, really important. All right, well, moving on, next series of questions. I visit a lot of schools, and sometimes I see what I might call the 1,000 points of light plan, where everybody can do anything they want with technology. There's, 1,000 apps on the device, and there's no focus. I know that doesn't happen in any of your districts. But if you were going to focus on one thing, because at some point I think everybody on the faculty should know that over the next X number of months, we are all working on one thing. Now, I'm okay with 1,000 points of light if you really need to, have 1,000 things you're doing, but I also think we should focus. So if you were going to focus on one aspect of professional growth, what would that be?
We are wholeheartedly invested in our strategic plan at the district level and at the campus level. We've at each campus and department, we've created our own strategic plan that is nested within the district's plan. A big part of that is personalized learning. And so our focus for this year is helping teachers to personalize the learning for their students. That's the focus.
Everywhere I've been, it's personalized learning,
that's right.
You got personalized learning.
So what is that?
So walked up to any teacher, are you personalizing learning? Yes. That's the end of that conversation. We're doing it. I think we have to define.
Yeah.
And I have friends who thought they were there, absolutely would swear they're doing personalized learning. Then they realized they were absolutely wrong. They're in the next orbit. Then they realized they're absolutely wrong. Right? So personalized learning, you got to help me.
Sure.
It's one of those things that you wake up in the morning and you say, I'm not going to personalize learning today. I mean, it's...
So 3 years ago, when the camps were developing the strategic plan.
Sorry.
No, this is good.
Sorry.
They all had this is great. They all had personalized learning in the plan. The funny part is we were all trying to figure out what is really personalized learning.
Yeah, what?
And there wasn't a standard definition anywhere in this country about what personalized learning was, and so we had to come up with our own definition of what it meant to us.
Oh, you did?
We did.
Oh.
So
No, don't tell them. Don't tell them. Tell them.
For us, it's a matter of it's aligned to UDL almost, but we didn't want to use UDL because that's passé. So access, engage, and express. How do students access the information? How do we engage them in the learning process, and how do they express their learnings? So it's really centered around that. We're doing a lot of work on blended learning to specifically get students into that model of access, express, and engage.
And also we had a lot of people that came to the table to decide. We did a lot of this took almost an entire school year just for us to develop what personalized learning means in CCISD. And to add to that, we decided that we could not have personalized learning in our classrooms without standards-based grading. And so you want to talk about a huge shift in our our culture, our teachers' mindset, our student mindset, and our parents' mindset that no, you will not be getting a 90 or an 80 for that work. And so we're in the process of shifting to standards-based grading. But also we decided you could not have personalized learning without flexible scheduling. And so we are working toward that. We know we're not there yet, but we kind of start this, here's the baby steps to personalized learning, give your students choice in how they access, engage, and express their learning. And then, oh yeah, by the way, here's standards-based grading. And then now the next layer, we're trying to filter in some flexible scheduling.
Okay, so the one thing I would teach that I don't think we teach at all to staff is instructional design. We're getting more and more devices in the hands of students. We're getting them into an LMS, we're designing content, and no one's ever been taught how to do that. And so one of my favorite books, E-Learning by Design by William Horton, it's an oldie but a goodie. He says, if you don't get instructional design right, you only increase the speed and certainty of failure. We know technology is not the silver bullet. Technology is the great amplifier. You will amplify solid instruction, but you'll also amplify really poor instruction. And so I feel really passionately about teaching teachers how to design online because it's different than how we teach face-to-face. And I think if we can do that, then whether the teacher is trying to blend their classroom or they're personalizing and helping the student take charge of their own learning, or maybe they're just wanting to introduce more tech-rich activities into a PBL, whatever it is, the buzzword that of the day, I think if we can design the content and the activities online and we can do that well, then we're going to see a lot more success.
Well, I hope there's no principals from my district here because I'm probably going to go against. So I think, you know, I come from an elementary background, but if I were to try and focus on one thing, it would be who's setting the goal for the day, and it shouldn't be you, the teacher, and who's asking the questions, and it shouldn't be you, the teacher. So that to me would be the fundamental training that I would focus on to create a culture where students, where I'm uncovering their thinking because they're the learners instead of me driving it all the time. That makes sense.
Yeah, I want to build on the word question. I get to hang out with some crazy people, and when to hang out. Have any of you heard of Wolfram Alpha? Yes. It's a kind of a search tool. Stephen Wolfram invented it, and I think it's the most powerful search tool in K-12 education by far. It's amazing how many kids have never even been taught how to use the most powerful search tool in education. And so at the end of the day with Stephen, I asked him, given what's coming in search technology and crazy stuff coming, he said, the answers to almost every assignment a teacher currently gives is going to be available online. Any algebra problem, any calculus problem, any physics problem, any chemistry problem, Shakespeare. He said, what's not online are the questions. The people who can ask the most interesting questions will get ahead and have an advantage over people who have not been taught how to ask the most interesting questions. And he said that's the skill we should be teaching kids, is how to ask the most interesting questions. So you got to forgive me on this, but I think we should take something like personalized learning, whatever it is, and break it down bit by bit by bit. So one aspect of personalized learning for me is, can the learner direct a line of inquiry? Can the learner be tenacious and be driven about developing 25 questions off a photograph of a bullet going through an apple, whatever the content is? Now, it turns out that an online platform is really cool system for gathering 25 questions from every kid and then figuring out which ones are convergent, which ones are divergent, which ones are hypothetical, and then which ones are we missing. And you start talking like this to kids, divergent, convergent, and they look at you like, we were never taught the difference between a divergent and a convergent question. Are you this making sense?
I was never taught the difference between.
You were never taught. And so I worry that we haven't yet defined how complicated learning is. It's complicated. And until we do that, I don't know that we're going to unleash the amazing power that we have in our fingertips. But I'm going to tell you the one thing I would teach, if I could teach one thing well, and I'm working on it, is teaching people how to ask the most interesting questions. In fact, that would be day one of any class in any school. Just teach kids to ask questions. Do any of you do that? Day one, teach kids to ask in every category of question. Do you know all the categories? Why would you? You would never had to learn this. Is my attitude okay?
Alan is the master of asking questions. Those of you who've seen him, he puts everyone on the spot and profound, thought-provoking questions. Right?
But if I were going to do one thing for the first month of school, it would be we're all going to teach kids how to ask the most interesting questions. That would be the first one thing. I have a series of these. Any thoughts on that? You can make fun of me. Or ask me.
Well, if you think about little kids, what's the question that they always ask?
Why?
Why? And when do they lose that?
Right away.
They lose it in like second or third grade. All right, stop asking why. But that there's something that's just beautiful when a child is just wanting to know why, and then they don't give up. They keep coming back. So, why? And kids, if we can get kids to do that even through high school now, that's not asking the most beautiful questions, but it's certainly...
that is the name of a book, The Most Beautiful Question. I would give Amor. Amor. Very good, Karen. The unlearning. We're teaching all these new things, like asking questions. And, do we have time for another round?
Well, I was thinking...
I'll stop.
We can also ask if there's any questions up there.
Yes, there you go.
Okay.
If you want to finish that thought, then we can do that.
Do any of you care to answer this question? What do we do, or any of you, what are we doing every day out of a traditional design of school that we should stop doing? Homework is up there.
For me, it's discrete classes.
It's what?
Discrete classes.
Discrete.
Yes. Math, science, social studies. And when it's set up well, they are all related.
So you want to move to Finland?
I didn't say that
Finland
either.
got rid of discrete classes in their secondary. Are you from Finland? From Finland? No? I'm going to get rid of our current assessment model. In fact, the research, I'm into reading game theory these days. A guy named Zoran Popovic, blowing my mind these days. And Zoran Popovic has studied game theory, and what should we reward to get the best results? So right now, the system rewards the right answer. Did you get number one right? Is that the right answer? Well, it turns out that when you study kids who are playing complicated games, really, really complicated games, the reward is for the struggle. It's for the tenacity of going from where you are to the highest level you can be. But we don't reward the struggle now. So if I could, and one day these systems will gather enough data, but I think we should get started on talking about it, is rewarding the struggle instead of the right answer.
We have to. The kids already have the right answers. I saw OneNote. Have any of you seen the OneNote? All they have to do is put in the equation, and then press on the math, and it solves it for them. Even shows them the steps. So kids have that at their fingertips. We have got to change. I'm a math teacher. we've got to change how we're teaching students to learn.
Yes, but if you take that, because I've done that, and you take screencasting software, and after the kid pushes the button and they see all the steps, then they have to draw the rectangle across their work, hit the record button, and explain why. That's the struggle.
That's right.
So I actually like the idea that they can get all the steps.
Oh, yeah.
Because even with all the steps, they might not know why the math worked.
That's right.
So you add screencasting software, then you take the best video recordings of the kids and you put them in the platform. So those are tutorials for other kids. Oh my gosh, you're on a roll. Right? Right. Hallelujah. Okay, we'll go audience. We'll go audience. Thank you, audience. We have to give you the mic for the video camera.
Hi, my name is Audience. A question for you. I'm a firm believer in discussion as an important tool in professional growth, professional learning, or even development. And my question for you who are using an online platform is how do you make it safe and actively solicit dissenting opinions in an online form so that someone doesn't come off sounding contrary, you know, absent intonation and face-to-face conversation? Circle A if... No.
That's a great question.
That's a great question.
I think it starts off when we elicit conversation in an open forum like this even, and we set the expectation that we're not going to criticize. We're going to allow the conversation, and you can expand on it and add to it, but not criticize. There's a place, a time and a place for that also, though. There are times that you do want to criticize, but depending on what the conversation is about, you have to set those boundaries and expectations from the front end.
I didn't mean criticizing. I meant, I find it sometimes I have a hard time online disagreeing and I'm feeling like...
Well, that's why I don't get on Facebook.
It's like I actually want to engage in that discussion, and I think there's nothing more powerful than a peer or a friend who thinks differently than you do.
That's right.
Because it enhances your perspective, it changes your perspective. How is that safely facilitated online?
Yeah, so we had this exact discussion. So we are videotaping our teachers and putting them online for feedback, discussion, and growth, right? So we have a lot of conversations around growth mindset and CCISD. And so getting teachers to understand that there's always room for improvement is very difficult. And so I think we started the beginning, we had to set some very, some norms that were very specific. Feedback was done in a way that it was positive with the growth mindset in mind and not in a way that it was viewed as disagreeing. So when we started our feedback sessions on the videos, we actually had sentence stems modeled in our discussion. So it gave almost like a sense of a starting point of how to appropriately give that feedback and also that alternate viewpoint. So sentence stems were kind of a really good starting place for us with that.
I don't like where I left off, because I don't. I'm thinking about it. I'm like, no, Robert, that was stupid.
He's criticizing himself.
I'm criticizing myself. I didn't mean criticize. I didn't mean criticize, and I do think disagreement is good. If we are coming at a discussion from the same perspective and the same angle, there's no learning and there's no room for that growth mindset or even understanding each other, why we think differently. So we encourage that, but it just has to be done professionally.
With with the web, a little rough here, but I was in a classroom and kids were reading Number the Stars by Lois Lowry. It's a kind of a 4th, 5th, 6th grade novel on the Holocaust, right? So it's a little difficult good book, difficult concept for a young person get their head wrapped around. How bad was that, right? But we're learning that younger and younger children can deal with difficult material, so I'm in, right? I'm in. What was fascinating to me is the teacher was running the discussion about this awful event, you know, and there was a recording. I took the recording, I presented it in Denmark, where the book took place. I will never do this again for the rest of my life. And the teachers in Denmark were horrified by the conversation. They said, you didn't bring in this, and this. Now, the American teacher who's never been to Copenhagen, where the book takes place, and understands what was going on, but read that book 25 times, so thinks she knows the book, but doesn't really understand. I don't think that's unusual. I think we actually have, you got to forgive me, this is going to sound really harsh. We have a lot of teachers teaching who don't know what they're talking about. Outside the context of their own classroom. I'm trying to say this as sensitively as I can. I'm not doing a good job.
Hard to be an expert on everything.
So I highly respect teachers who understand there's a world out there of different views. Doesn't have to be dissenting, just different, and connects kids. So if you're going to read that book or you're going to talk about anything, connect. I have other friends who, if you read a book, they connect the children to children in that city to talk about the book. Then you get dissenting, then you get different views. So I want to support what you're saying about online forum, how do I put up dissenting views, but within your own, forgive me, bubble, your own bubble, we're all in our own bubble, there I said it. We have to get out of our own bubbles. We have the whole world, and I worry that we're not using the world well, even though we have online connections to every classroom in this country now. So it's not just teaching you how to dissent and have a different point of view. It's teaching teachers how to actively gather across the world different points of view. Important skill.
Hi, I'm Rosendo Mendoza from San Bernardino. And, you know, I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of adult learners. And, you know, disagreement is good as long as we can listen to each other. I think that's one piece that, especially in discussion, we often don't listen. We're ready to just jump out and make sure that our opinion's known. So I appreciate that she said, you know, sentence stems are important, and something we try to work on, especially when you're discussing topics that you know that there are going to be people who dissent. So firstly, within that sentence stem to say, I appreciate that you said this, but here's what I have to offer too. And especially with our students, they should be able to listen or read and find something that they can, in a way, agree with or at least appreciate before they extend their opinion. So that, in my opinion, that's one way to make sure that it's a safe place to collaborate, to communicate, as long as we're listening to one another, not just making sure that everybody listens to me.
There's an amazing TED Talk by Eli Pariser on the internet bubble. Have any of you heard Eli Pariser's TED Talk? Would you recommend it?
Yeah, everything about the filters.
It turns out that the internet, despite all of its wonderful intent originally, is actually causing amazing divisions. As if I have to say that out loud. But Eli Pariser explains what is going on behind the curtain of the algorithm that is the fuel of that division. I think every teacher should watch this TED Talk. It's just search filter bubble Eli Pariser. There are also models, I mean, to build on what you said about, I appreciate what you said, so if I'm running a meeting and I'm being the nice guy, there are 3 opening phrases I've been taught, and we go through rounds. The first opening phrase is, I like it because. The second one is, have you thought of? And the third one is, I have an idea for you. If you start with one of those 3 phrases, you almost have to be constructive and not mean about your engagement from a different point of view.
We have time for one more question.
So, Matthew DeMena, I'm from New York. Quick question in terms of how you shifted your culture. How did you shift from the impression that this was going to be an evaluation of the teachers to where it's informative instructional? Because I know where we're from, it's going to be all, I don't want to put this in writing, I don't want to be videoed, I don't want this being out there because how it's going to reflect upon me.
Yeah, so that's a very good point. We definitely had to go through that mindset shift. Even in the past, our instructional coaches have traditionally worked with our low-performing teachers. And so if you were working with an instructional coach or they were videotaping you, it was because there was a problem. And so the first thing we did to shift that mindset is to make sure that our coaches were very advertising, very open about working with our high flyer teachers first. And so when we start seeing the best of our best teachers work with our instructional coaches, having themselves videotaped, having themselves open for feedback, then it really kind of shifted the mindset to this truly is for my growth and my learning process, and I want to be a better teacher and not for an evaluative purposes. That did not happen overnight. It was a very difficult shift, and I don't think we're 100% there yet by any means, but we definitely wanted to showcase our teachers of the year. Our best of the best teachers were the ones that were doing this first.
Right, one second. To add to that, I think it's really important that the leaders, the professional learning staff, not development, that they are practicing what they preach too. So what do we want? We want students to embrace failure. We want them to not focus on the right answer. But then what do we do to teachers? We give them PD and then send them out into the wild with their kids, and we don't let them fail either. So I think it's really important that I am just as vulnerable and just as much up for feedback and growth as my teachers are. So this ILP thing that I've been doing, next month, I'm getting together with the teachers, and we are going to sit around and talk about what went well, what didn't go well, how we can improve it together, not what I'm going to do. That's not an independent reflection. And so I'm embracing that. And now when I go and help them with something that maybe they're struggling with or something new, it's more trusting because I'm putting myself in that space too.
So in our district, along the lines of what they're doing in Clear Creek, we have our Vanguard Fellowship, who are our early adopters. It's an application role, and teachers are selected. And we began this year with them, well, it's their first year really, with Pineapple Partners, where we got them to partner up with a fellow teacher where they are videotaping each other just because of a lack of funds to be able to afford them the opportunity to actually go in. So much like you talked about earlier, they set up their phone in the back of the room, they videotape what's going on, they put it in Google Drive and share it with their Pineapple partner, and they give each other feedback that way. I think in our district as well, the new T-test model for teacher appraisal is based on more of a growth mindset. Is that something where teachers are going to embrace and see that overnight? Absolutely not, but it is a cultural shift that we all have to make, that we're all learners right alongside our kids.
Well, this was excellent. Thank you so much. I'm going to let Alan make a few closing remarks, but before I do, I just want to reiterate that all of these amazing things that these folks are doing, both with teachers and with students, they're using the It's Learning platform. We'd love to show you how they're doing it. If you want to stop by our booth, 2352. Today we're giving away Microsoft Windows devices as a raffle. So you still have time to enter in for the Windows tablet. Tomorrow we're giving away an iPad and an Apple TV. So stop by, learn more about what these folks are doing, and enter into our raffle. Thanks again. I'm going to leave it to you, Alan, to say some closing remarks.
Yeah, well, I want to thank the panel. I have the amazing knowledge and wisdom here. I just think the synergies of people working together are more powerful than individual teachers in their own classrooms. I do worry, you alluded to this, Robert, get rid of classes. I don't know that we have the right organizational structure that we've inherited, that we should keep it. So I do worry about that. I think you're right. We have to look at some bigger issues of design. But in the meantime, the opportunity of linking people together to share knowledge and wisdom, and in a constructive way, has got to be a better system than individual teachers lined up down the hallway. So I think it's a fun time. I think it's an amazing time to be in this business. We are going to transform learning, and you clearly are on your way to doing that. So I'm honored to be with you. Thanks for coming. Yes? Yay? All good.
Fantastic.